Okay, I want to make a quick video review of the Wave ventilation system. I wish somebody would have had a review like this on YouTube when I decided to buy my unit. My intentions was to replace my dehumidifier downstairs, which here is my dehumidifier. It's just a 35 pot unit. Does a fairly adequate job in a den my size, but I was always emptying it twice a day, maybe sometimes 3 times a day. Here's the size of my den. It's approximately 600 square feet, and when I talked to the salesman, he said when I bought the unit and had it installed, I could probably do away with my dehumidifier in a couple of days and it would control the humidity of the house. Let's go outside and look at the outside of the house and look at what it looks like on the outside. You install the unit by having to knock a hole through the wall, and there's the vent that goes with the unit. It's a 10-inch hole. The wall is the brick, the 8-inch cinder block, and the sheetrock, which I had to have a contractor do. I kind of wish that they would have had a vent color to match my siding. You know, I've got other vents that stick out the end of the house that are matching, but that's beside the point. It doesn't look too bad, but to describe the outside of the house, it's the front of the house is above ground with the basement below ground, the den's below ground, a gradual slope. I have no standing water and really have no reason to have a really high humidity in my basement, but I do, and that was the reason I wanted to get the unit. Now let's go back inside. I'm not going to mention any names, but I called the Wave ventilation salesman. They'll tell you just about anything you want to hear, but I wanted to get rid of my dehumidifier, and they said this would take care of the problem. I said, well, how much is it going to cost to install? They told me approximately between $250 and $300, maybe $350. It cost me $350. And the unit itself cost a little less than $1,300. I was okay with that because I wanted to get rid of my dehumidifier. And the contractor, he would not tell me the contractor's name until I bought the unit. That was kind of suspicious. I had to wait on the unit to arrive at the house before he would let me know who to call. Called the guy, showed up, and I would have expected somebody a little more professional looking, but he did a pretty adequate job. He had a very colorful language, spoke words that I wouldn't recommend hearing, and I was surprised at the way people would send somebody out like that, but he got the job done. He done a pretty good job. It cost me $350. He cleaned up pretty good after himself and left. He told me that I could go ahead and just put my dehumidifier out in the garage, be done with it, wouldn't never need it again. And I was kind of took back by that. I thought, well, that'll be pretty good, but I'm gonna keep my dehumidifier. So when I started running the unit, I put the humidity on what they recommended at 55. I put my dehumidifier in automatic on 60, and the unit never would pull down. The unit ran constantly, the dehumidifier ran constantly, and so I started asking questions. When I called one of the ladies that was a salesman, I'm not going to mention her name, the first thing she asked me was, do you have an air conditioner in your house? Well, I live in the deep south, and it's like 90 degrees most of the time in June, July, and August. I do have a air conditioner. I don't know what she meant by that, but I thought that kind of peculiar. I finally got a hold of a technician. He was rather knowledgeable. He asked me to do a few things to try to get the unit to working good. One of the things he asked me to do was to buy a fan and circulate the air in the basement. He also asked me if the way down into my den was open, which it is. You come down the steps from the upstairs. He said, well, it might be good to run a fan upstairs. Well, this is kind of some things that you would think that they would tell you before you bought the unit. He also asked me how many vents I had in my den, which if you want to look, I've got 4 across the den. One's on the other side of the light, one is over there, and one is there, and there's a 5th one inside the laundry room, which he asked me to close the 2 in line with the steps coming from the upstairs to give a free, clear path of air going to the unit, and that would help bring down the humidity in my den. It never did. I've run this unit for almost 2 months. The humidity never came down. It maintained between 63 and 68 degrees most of the time. If the dehumidifier ever kicked off and filled up and kicked off before I changed it, the humidity would rise considerably, sometimes into the mid-70s. It never picked up and started to show an improvement in my den. That was what I was wanting. The technician also mentioned the fact that I ought to wait 4 seasons, which meant a year before I would start seeing any results. He mentioned like, well, you've got moisture in your carpet, you've got moisture in your couch, you've got moisture in your walls, you've got moisture in your furniture. Well, maybe that's the case, but when I run a dehumidifier, it maintains a humidity level where I desire it. But I wanted to do away with my dehumidifier. The unit just did not work. I would not recommend this to anyone who is wanting to get rid of their dehumidifier. For me, the unit does not work. My biggest thing was I would recommend buying a bigger dehumidifier, which I did. I bought one with a condensate pump in it. I ran a line down the wall, as you can see, and into my laundry room and into the back of the drain at the wash machine, and it works perfect. The one other thing I wanted to mention is once you have to return the unit, which I would have loved to have known, they offer a full refund, which is great. But they don't offer a refund on what it costs for you to pay to have it installed. They also don't offer you anything because at the top of the unit, there's a big 10-inch hole that runs to the outside of the house that I'm going to have to repair. So once I replace the sheetrock, I'm going to also probably have to paint the den because it's not going to match. And as you can see, I've got a rather large den and I do not like to paint. So that's going to have to take place. And the funny thing about it is once the salesmen have sold you the unit, they're fine and dandy. But when you call and start complaining about the unit, their temperament changes, their voice changes, they seem to not want to deal with you. And so I wouldn't recommend calling Wave to buy one of these units. The technician, he was as helpful as can be. We got to know each other fairly well. We called each other several times. And in the end, he said, well, there's really not much more I can do. We're just going to have to wait and see what the unit does down the road. That's not what I'm interested in. I was interested in the unit kind of picking up and maintaining a little bit. I wrote down the humidity in my den every day, at least twice a day. You can go to the unit. You can push this little check mark right here and hold it for about 15 seconds. And it'll show you what the current humidity is. This is the set point that I would love to get it to pull down to. It never would get below 62 to 63%. I decided to package the unit up and send it back. I have to pay for packaging, they'll pay for shipping. So, in my opinion, it was a waste of money. I learned from my mistakes. This was a costly mistake. If it was me, if you're wanting to buy this unit to maintain the humidity level in any part of your house, this will not do it. So I'm fixing to take it off the wall and ship it back. I hope this has been helpful to anybody that's considering buying it. I wished I'd thought of some of these scenarios first. I did think of the hole in the wall that I would have to patch if I had to send it back. I really didn't think about that I would have to pay for the cost of the contractor. I thought I'd get a full refund on everything, but I'm gonna eat the cost. I bought me a new, bigger dehumidifier that has a pump that I will not have to empty. It's working great. It's pulled the humidity down to around 50% in my den. I'd like to maintain it between 50 and 55. This white elephant never would pull the humidity down after doing everything that they asked me to do. So I'm going to post this on YouTube. I hope it's helpful to somebody.